The Disturbance. It's our big Sunday night National Football League recap show. Yeah, it's usually a show I try to knock out in like 10 to 15 minutes. And basically, I'll give you some quick thoughts on the overall sort of weekend of the National Football League. We'll cover a couple of the featured games, and then we'll do sort of lessons learned from the National Football League on this particular Sunday. Plus, I will explain to you why Baker Mayfield has absolutely earned the right to do Progressive insurance commercials for at least one more week. All of that, and trust me, a whole lot more coming up on the big show today. I'm Dave DeBaud. This is The Disturbance. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm supposed to grovel for subscribers, so if you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and subscribe to the show. Now, we're not going to sit here and give you all the scores of the game. I did want to sort of let you know that we are going to cover a couple feature games today, and one of those is going to be the Cowboys-Seahawks game. We're going to touch very briefly on the New York Jets-Colts game, primarily because I just want to know, I want to get confirmation that Adam Gase was allowed back on the New York Jets plane flying back to Indianapolis. We're also going to cover what I think was the best game of the day, the Rams at the Buffalo Bills. We'll touch on the Bears' huge comeback against the Falcons. I'll give you my opinions on Nick Foles versus Mitch Trubisky. And I do want to just briefly touch on the Las Vegas Raiders heading to New England and getting beat by Cam Newton. All of that we'll cover. A couple other just sort of like fascinating things that happened in the National Football League today. And I sort of teased it at the beginning, but it was sort of hard for me to sort of grasp what I was watching this Sunday with one Baker Mayfield. Now, I'm not saying Baker Mayfield was one of the top three quarterbacks with his QBR rating this weekend. Baker Mayfield actually had a QBR this weekend of 117. So unless there's something wrong with the calculator, Baker Mayfield came in with 117 QBR ranking this weekend. He threw 2 touchdowns for a whopping 156 yards. I'm just saying Baker Mayfield has absolutely earned the right in their big 14-point victory over the Washington football team to at least do Progressive insurance commercials for another week. I had to say something about this because I've been all over the Cleveland Browns. I've been all over Baker Mayfield specifically, and I do have to give him a little bit of credit for beating a bad football team. It is something that they almost failed to do last week against the Bengals. Speaking of the Bengals, leave it to Carson Wentz, the Philadelphia Eagles, and Joe Burrow to actually end a game in a tie. Now, I've covered ties extensively on other podcasts, so I'm not going to get into it too much other than to say ties should not exist in the National Football League. It makes absolutely no sense to me that ties still exist in the National Football League. I watched some of this game. I had a chance to watch Carson Wentz play, and something still is not right with Carson Wentz. It is that obvious when you actually watch him. Now, as for Joe Burrow, he had a nice game. He threw for over 300 yards in this game. He threw a couple touchdown passes. You know, he's a good player. I just wish, for Joe Burrow's sake, as well as Justin Herbert's sake, that they had some offensive line protection. Like earlier tonight, the Los Angeles Chargers actually lost a game to the Carolina Panthers at home. I know like the Chargers sort of don't have a real home. I get all of that. We understand that. But for them to play a home game where they didn't have to fly across the country And for this team to play as poorly as they played is a clear reflection on the coaching staff, as well as how absolutely bad that offensive line was there in protecting Justin Herbert in that game. Okay, so those are some just super quick thoughts on what happened and what went down in the National Football League today. Going to cover a little bit more extensively the Dallas Cowboys Seattle Seahawks game, a game in which the Seahawks ended up winning 38-31. Russell Wilson, 130 QBR in that game, 27 for 40, 315 yards, 5 touchdowns. He threw 5 touchdown passes, and wait for it, guess how many interceptions good old Russell Wilson had? And the answer is a big goose egg. Look, if they were giving out the most valuable player of the National Football League award right now, it would have to go to Russell Wilson. I mean, speaking of an offensive line that's not great, look, there are a ton of bad offensive lines in this National Football League. If Russell Wilson was a traditional quarterback, if he was like a Kirk Cousins who could occasionally roll out, this team would be 0-3 right now. Look, clearly, if you took Russell Wilson off of this team would be absolutely terrible. It's that simple. They play no defense, as do the Cowboys. Both of these teams play absolutely no defense. Dak Prescott had another huge game. 37 for 57, 472 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, but the last pick was a desperation pick, so I'm not going to hold that against him. He had a nice game. Something wasn't right with Ezekiel Elliott in this game. He seemed off for the majority of the football game, and the stats absolutely back that up. 14 carries, 34 yards rushing for a whopping Todd Gurley-like 2.4 yards a carry. I don't know what the hell was wrong with Ezekiel Elliott today, but clearly something wasn't right with him in this game. Look, if this game had gone on for another 10 minutes, the Cowboys might have won. It was just sort of a question of who was going to have the ball in the last possession or the last 2 possessions, about who was actually going to win this game, because defense was absolutely scarce in this game. And if you go back and watch the film, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, real quick, moving on to the Colts at home against the New York Football Jets. This does not give me any great, I don't get like super excited about having to continually week in and week out rip on Adam Gase as a head coach of the New York Jets. You all know my opinions on this already. We all have basically the same opinion across the sports media, across sort of the general public. We can all see that Adam Gase should have never been hired as the head coach of this New York Football Jets team. We are 3 games into it. The Jets are 8 games away. They're 8 weeks away from their bye, which is a week 11. I got to believe that this Joe Douglas, the GM of this New York Jets football team, is going to have to make a move well before they even come close to sniffing the bye week. This was what I was saying should happen, which was if the New York Jets lost this game to the Indianapolis Colts, who, by the way, really aren't that good. If they lost to the Colts by more than 25, Adam Gase should not be allowed back on the plane, which is exactly what happened in this game, except for the fact that word is Gase was seen, was actually seen getting on the New York Jets plane, flying back to the New York metropolitan area. Look, if you are a New York Jets fan and you're suddenly talking about being in the Trevor Lawrence derby at this point, because you just drafted Sam Darnold 2 years ago. If you're already at that point because you don't think Sam Darnold's getting any better, hey, and keep in mind, Adam Gase is the brilliant head coach that decided it was a good idea to carry 5 quarterbacks on his roster. Now, I'm including a couple that are on their practice squad, but he literally has 5 quarterbacks on his roster. Maybe Adam Gase knows something about Sam Darnold that the rest of us don't know, but clearly Sam Darnold did not play well today. The numbers speak to exactly what went down in this game. Darnold with 3 picks, 1 touchdown pass, and I'm still surprised that he was able to pass for more than 150 yards in this particular game. Not to knock Phillip Rivers, but as he's gotten older, gravity is certainly taking over a little bit more, and his sidearm throw is actually, I think, about 2 inches closer to the ground this year than it was last year. Gravity definitely taking hold there. Still a good game, 17 for 21, 217 yards passing. Moving on to the Bears at the Falcons. So real quick, Dan Quinn should have been fired on the spot. Like, he should have been let go. He should be let go today. If he's not let go today, he should be let go tomorrow. The Arthur Blank team of the Atlanta Falcons, the owner of the Atlanta Falcons, at this point just needs to put him out of his misery. I like Dan Quinn. I think he's a good coach. He'll get a shot maybe again as a defensive coordinator or an offensive coordinator. He can sort of do both. Really specializes more on the defensive side of the ball. But he is a good coach. He's a good guy. I hate to see him sort of go down like this. He's another guy that should have never been given the opportunity to be a head coach again in the National Football League this particular year. I feel the same way about Matt Patricia, who somehow miraculously willed the Detroit Lions to a victory in Arizona today. 26-23 in that one. As for the Atlanta Falcons, this was the second week in a row they've blown a huge lead in the second half. This was a 16-point lead. 16-point lead in the second half, and they totally blew it. And then what was even worse than all of that, because you guys have all heard me rip on Nick Foles a lot. Specifically, my ripping on Nick Foles was about how poorly he looked and how poorly he performed with the Jacksonville Jaguars last year. I felt like Nick Foles took the money and then didn't put in the effort or the time. And once he got injured, he was like, I'm done. I'm out of here. I got to get out of here. This is like the wrong place for me. So he hit the eject button, never really did anything for that organization last year, which was probably a good thing because we got to see the gutsy Gardner Minshew and sort of what he can do as a quarterback in the National Football League. If you're asking me what I think Gardner can actually be in the National Football League at his peak, the answer is 8-8, which makes him sort of the second coming of a Ryan Fitzpatrick. Yeah, he'll have a great game. He'll show you glimpses of brilliance. And then the next week he'll turn around and, speaking of Ryan Fitzpatrick, get his ass kicked by Ryan Fitzpatrick in a home game on national television. I'm just saying that's who Gardner Minshew is. So Nick Foles enters the game. He proceeds to throw 3 touchdowns for 188 yards, replaces Mitch Trubisky in the third quarter. Look, I don't know. It's like Matt Nagy and the Chicago Bears are trying to lose games, but they can't seem to find a way. I mean, like, they've been trying for 3 weeks to lose a football game, and the players, despite the moves the coaches keep making, keep finding ways to win. Maybe it's part of Matt Nagy's strategy. Maybe Matt Nagy is the new nutty professor of the National Football League. I think he sort of is. At this point, if you think about what they did, they brought in Nick Foles, they gave him a lot of money, then they made him do a quarterback competition with the guy they brought him in to replace, and then they said, it's even, and we're going to go with Mitch Trubisky instead. And the reason they did that is they love Matt Nagy loves the fact that Mitch Trubisky can run for 45 yards in a play, which he did in the first half of this game. But what they can't handle is the rest of his decision-making as a quarterback, specifically when it comes to actually successfully finding a way to throw a pass to a wide receiver that is further than 15 yards down the field. And that's sort of where Nick Foles accelerates. He accelerates in that 15 to 30-yard range. Intermediate passes is Nick Foles' specialty. Sure, he throws a good deep ball occasionally, but that's always set up by the fact that he's so precise in that 15 to 30-yard arena. So Nick Foles will be the new starting quarterback going forward for the Chicago Bears. And with Atlanta blowing it for a second week in a row, that should be the end of Dan Quinn and the ATL. Raiders at Patriots, before we get into our feature game real quick. Raiders flying high after their big Death Star appearance with their new stadium on Monday Night Football. Raider Nation has been talking Super Bowls. They went ahead and they booked a lot of hotel rooms in Tampa already, which is ridiculous. And they got just beat by a far better head coach in Bill Belichick than John Gruden in today's game. If you have a chance and you subscribe to the National Football League Game Pass and you want to see what I'm talking about, I encourage you to actually watch that football game and specifically you can sort of skip the first half. Just watch how the Patriots just completely destroy the Raiders in the second half. And it's a systematic approach. And in this particular game, it wasn't about Cam Newton's arm. It was more about their running game with Sony Michel and Rex Burkhead, who had 2 touchdowns in today's game. One of the interesting things about Rex is he averaged 8.2 yards a carry today. I'm just saying, like, they know their pieces. They know how to put them. They're not going to win every game. They're not the best team in the AFC. The Patriots probably aren't going to the Super Bowl. But if anybody else was coaching this team, they probably wouldn't be in the playoffs. And this team will most likely find a way to make it to the playoffs. As for the Raiders, it's just a fact that John Gruden's just not as good a coach as Bill Belichick, and his entire coaching staff got flatly outcoached. Watch the third and fourth quarter of this game, and you will understand exactly what I'm talking about. Finally, no, I'm not going to cover the Vikings-Tennessee game. The one thing I will say about that game real quick is the Vikings at least played like a legitimate National Football League team today. I was happy to see that. Always blown away when Ryan Tannehill throws for over 300 yards. If you look at the passing leaders and the rushing leaders and the wide receiving leaders in the NFL so far this week, you will find 2 Minnesota Vikings at the top. You will find Dalvin Cook as a rusher, and you will find their rookie wide receiver Justin Jefferson, who was at LSU last year, who had a huge breakout game for the Minnesota Vikings today. He played great, so good things for him and the Vikings offense in the future. If only they had an offensive line, and as one of my buddies would say, if only they had a different quarterback. But I'm not so down on Cousins as much as I'm down on the offensive line. The defense is a work in progress. They've been obliterated by injuries. Tennessee played well. Good strategy. Mike Vrabel actually outcoached Mike Zimmer, which wasn't too surprising to me at all. So moving on to our feature game, which is the Rams versus the Bills. I was trying to keep this under 15 minutes, so it looks like this is going to be a 22-minute show today. So thanks so much for tuning in. Anyways, so the Rams in their cool new uniforms flew all the way across the country for the second week in a row and had some fun with the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. I got a text from a friend of mine at one point just ripping on Jared Goff, telling me how bad Jared Goff is. I sent a response, and my response was basically, I trust Jared Goff to bring them back. And then I said, sort of. And of course, Goff did bring him back. The Rams were down by like 25 points at one point in this game. They came all the way back, took the lead. There was a horrific pass interference call at the end of this game, and that is why the Buffalo Bills won this game. It is that simple. The Rams should appeal the Buffalo Bills victory on this one. I do not know why they made the call that they made. It should have been reviewed by somebody in New York to make sure that it was an actual pass interference call, and it wasn't. So ultimately, I know everybody says things even things out, and it's never just about one play in a game. But when you're down to the end of a game and a pass interference call as horrific as that one was at the end of this game, it's easy and accurate to actually point to that play and say, that is why we lost the game. Don't be fooled by all of these people that are going to talk about this tomorrow and over the next couple days that say, oh, it's a National Football League. Everything eventually evens out. No, no. This game was lost specifically because of a bad referee call on a pass interference call down at like the 5-yard line at the end of the game with like 13 seconds to go. And that is why the Rams lost this game. Jared Goff, 23 for 32 for 321. I love Josh Allen. I love watching this guy play football. It's just fun he's a football player. You know, he's an actual football player. 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, and is always fun to see how well he plays. Look, this is a good Rams team. You know how I feel about the Rams. I've got them winning the NFC West this year. I wasn't surprised, by the way, to see the 49ers win in New York against the Giants. I think like collectively, if you took the best players from the Giants and the best players from the Jets, they would have basically scored 3 more points than the Giants did today in their loss to the San Francisco 49ers. I think it's amazing to me how bad football has become in New York with those 2 football franchises. It's disgraceful. It's exactly what it is. Because the Rams, you want to talk about injuries. You want to talk about major injury. Sorry, the 49ers, if you want to talk about major injuries, it's unbelievable how many of their top players are not going to play for the rest of the year. And they're just filling holes with guys they just signed off the street on Thursday. It's absolutely 36-9 was the final in that game. So one last thought on the Rams. Look, Sean McVay, Jared Goff, the defense. The defense has some holes. That's one of the big things that we officially learned today. And I like to end this Sunday show with what have we learned today? And one of the things that we officially learned today is that it is true that the Rams defense has some major holes in the secondary. I know. I hear you yelling right now, Jalen Ramsey. Look, that's just on one side of the field. There's holes on the other side of the field. There's some holes at linebacker as well. If they don't get the kind of pressure that they need to get up front, they can be picked apart. Now, Josh Allen is one of the, probably top 10 quarterbacks in the National Football League today and trending up. I say he's trending up. He's heading up that ladder. And I don't see him playing chutes and ladders and dropping down anytime soon like a Baker Mayfield would. So I think he's, heading in the right direction. So we learned that the Rams, despite some of their holes, certainly are capable of beating a really good team. On the Buffalo Bills side, we learned that the Buffalo Bills are not scrubs. I was basically saying they hadn't proved anything yet because of who they had played to this point. Now that they played a team as good as the Rams, you can start to say, hey, maybe this Buffalo Bills team is for real. We also learned today that Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots are not going anywhere. This isn't going to be the year where the Patriots finish the season 3-13. And I know there's a lot of Patriot haters out there, but trust me, this is not that year. We also learned that the Cleveland Browns are good at beating, well, they're not even really good at it, but that they found a way to beat another bad football team. We know nothing else about the Cleveland Browns other than to say Baker Mayfield played well enough. He handed the ball off so well today. His hands-offs to Nick Chubbs were fantastic. So he should absolutely be allowed to have another week of Progressive insurance commercials. Expect some more OBJ trade talk, by the way, to happen later this week. We learned that Dan Quinn and Adam Gase, and I'm even going to throw Bill O'Brien in this, are all on the hot seat at this point in the National Football League. It is burning in New York, and it is absolutely on fire in the ATL. Those two have the two hottest seats in the National Football League, and I would be shocked if both of them are back next week as the head coaches of their respective teams. All right, so that's it for our big show. It looks like we're close to 30 minutes on this thing. But anyways, thanks so much for tuning in. This is the NFL Week 3 Sunday night recap show. For the Disturbance, I am Dave DeBob, reminding you to make sure to check out our big website at mighty.rip. Sports coverage on a daily basis, pretty witty stuff, so do check that out and have yourself a tremendous rest of your day.
The Disturbance is a production of the Mighty Rip Podcast Network. Okay, go ahead and properly kill